Good morning, all of you, my dear students. Today we are going to learn one of the poems by Matthew Arnold entitled as Dover Beach. So let's go through this poem. The poem entitled as Dover Beach by Matthew Arnold was published in 1867 in the volume entitled New Poems. So in this poem, we come across four stanzas containing a variable number of lines, and the range in length. So the range in length from 14 to 6 lines in length. There is no consistent rhyme scheme, but there are a number of random end rhymes such as and a throughout the poem, and it is written in irregular iambic pentameter, blank verse. So Dover Beach by Matthew Arnold is actually a dramatic monologue. It laments the loss of true Christian faith in England during the mid 1800s as science captured the minds of the public. So in this poem, the speaker is the poet who considered to be Matthew Arnold himself, and the poet begins this poem by describing a calm and quiet sea out in the English Channel. The sea is calm, the sea is quiet. The poet happens to stand on the Dover coast and looks across to France, where a small light can be seen briefly and then vanishes. The light is a symbolic manifestation of the diminishing faith of the English people and those the world around. The speaker is the poet himself, that is Matthew Arnold, who crafts an image of the sea receding and returning to land with the faith of the world as it changes throughout time. The sea is not returning here in this context. It is receding farther out into the strait. In this poem, the most important key word is the faith. Faith is used in this poem to encompass the whole world, holding the populace tight in its embrace. It is losing ground to the sciences, particularly those related to evolution. It reminds about Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. That is Charles Darwin's book, as you know, The Origin of Species, was published in 1859. So the poem thus concludes pessimistically as the speaker makes clear to the reader that all the beauty and happiness that one may believe they are experiencing is not in fact real. Again, we come to the same philosophy that the world is illusion. The things you perceive is not real, are not genuine. They may be the deception of your perception. Every perception is deception, and every deception is perception. It means that the life is absolutely transitory. The vision you are holding, it may be illusion. There is hardly any reality in it. So the beauty, happiness, all are transitory. Nothing is everlasting. Nothing is perpetual. So the world is actually without peace, joy, or help for those in need. And the race, the human race, is too distracted by its own ignorance to see where true assistance is needed anymore. So let's go through the poem and try to understand what exactly the poet wants to say through this poem, Door Beach. What's the first stanza of the poem? The sea is calm tonight. The tide is full. The moon lies fair upon the straits. On the French coast, the light gleams and is gone. The cliffs of England stand glimmering and vast out in the tranquil bay. Come to the window, sweet is the night air. Only from the long line of spray where the sea meets the moon blanched land, listen. You hear the grating roar of pebbles which the waves draw back and fling. At this return up the high strand, begin and cease, and then again begin with tremulous cadence, slow, and bring the eternal note of sadness in. This is the first stanza in which Matthew Arnold, the poet, begins Door Beach by giving a description of the setting in which it is taking place. It is conspicuous from the title itself, although never explicitly stated in the poem that the beach in the question is Dover. The beach is Dover, D-O-V-E-R, the coast of England. The sea is said to be calm. Here the sea is calm, tranquil, peaceful. There is a beach on the water. At full tide, the moon lies fair, lonely upon the straits. A strait is a narrow passage of water such as the England Channel onto which Dover Beach abuts. So although useful to imagine the speaker in a particular place, the setting is not as essential as what it represents in this poem. The speaker is able to see across the channel to the French side of the water. The lights on the far coast are visibly gleaming and then disappear. The cliffs of England are standing by themselves, vast and glimmering in the bay. The light that shines then vanishes, representing to the speaker or to Arnold himself the vanishing faith of the English people. So no one around him seems to see the enormity of what it happening. The night is quiet, tranquil. There is a calm. The speaker refers to a tranquil. But this reader will come to see many things may seem one way, but actually exist as the opposite. The speaker turns to another person that is in the scene with him and asks that. His unnamed person comes to the window and breathes in the sweet night air. The second half of the stanza is spent on describing the sounds of water that the speaker is weaving. The speaker is talking about the sound of the water, and the speaker draws his companion's attention to the sound that the water makes as it rushes it over the pebbles on the shore. How beautifully it is maintained. They roll over one another, creating the grunting roar. This happens over and over again as the sea recedes and returns. The slow cadence of this movement and its eternal repetitions seems sad to the narrator, as if the returning sea is bringing with it the eternal note of sadness in. So let's see what happens in stanza number second. Heard it on the Aegean, and it brought into his mind the turbid ebb and flow of human misery. We find also in the sound a thought, hearing it by this distant northern sea. In the second stanza, we come to understand that it is much shorter than the previous one, and wherein the poet relates the world in which the two characters are into the larger picture of history. The speaker is talking about the long ago. Sophocles also heard this sound on the Aegean Sea as the tides came in. It brought to his mind the feelings of human misery and how these emotions ebb and flow, ebb and flow. Sophocles, who penned the play Antigone, he is one of the best known dramatic writers of ancient Greece. Matthew Arnold, the poet, hopes to bring the reader's attention to the universal experience of misery that all throughout time have lived with. This stanza especially, it's a shorter one, in which we come to know that how this stanza ends with a return to the present, as the narrator states that we too are finding these emotions in the sound. We find the emotions in the sound. See, one thing that how the English words are created, especially. For example, many English words are nicely created. Suppose if you use the word, if you utter the word break, naturally there will be a break to your words. So how beautifully these words are interconnected. Uh, so you look at the word break. Once you say break, there is a break to your tongue, to your ideas. So let's see what happens in stanza number third. The sea of faith was once stew at full, and around us to shore lay like the folds of a bright griddle furled. Just 1 minute. There is a problem with this. Just 1 minute, I stop this. Okay. So actually, Door Beach is Matthew Arnold's the best known poem. The poem was written in 1851. What is the source of this poem? The poem actually is composed because of the inspiration by two visits the poet and his new wife, Frances, made to the south coast of England, where the white cliffs of Dover stand just 20 miles from the coast of France. According to many critics, many claim it to be a honeymoon poem, and that is understandable because romantic love, albeit of a Victorian nature, features have strongly been ingrained or embedded into the thematic concern of this poem. But still, there is a doubt about the poem, which goes deeper and deeper to fathom the essence of life, to fathom the notion of ecstasy, happiness, and the humanity's spiritual state in this poem. So the poem actually is a popular one, and the poem got its popularity of this particular work. Matthew Arnold himself was a sort of reluctant poet. He made his living as an inspector of schools and cultural critique, and wrote influential books such as the curiously titled Culture and Anarchy, written by Matthew Arnold, which was published in 1869. He couldn't stop the muse from surfacing. He said of poetry, what is the opinion of Matthew Arnold about poetry? What he says, more and more mankind will discover that we have to turn to poetry to interpret life for us, to console us, to sustain us. So here, the aim of poetry has been stated. So more and more mankind will discover. So this is the discovery of the human beings on the earth, that poetry is the source of interpreting life. The life is being interpreted through poetry, and it's a poetry which stands as an antidote to console ourselves, console our depressed emotions and feelings. It also helps to sustain us. This is the deep concern of the poem. The poem is very crucial in its own interpretation, because the poet was writing at a time when religion was under tremendous pressure from the sciences and evolutionary theory. So when exactly the poem was composed and how the circumstances have radically created a great or immense impact on the psyche of the poet is very crucial in this context. That is, the poet is talking about the religious matters in this poem. He's talking about the tremendous impact or the pressure that has created on his mind due to the science and evolutionary theory. So here the poet wants to talk about technology. The technology has really taken a grip on life. The technology has surpassed life, surpassed time, and technology has its huge mastery over the moments that we experience in life. So Matthew Arnold thought that poetry would replace conventional religion The power of the poetry is to replace conventional religion and become the new spiritual force in society. The poetry has the force, it's a new spiritual force in the society, and it has the power to replace conventional religion. Door Beach is an interesting poem by Matthew Arnold. It breaks with the old forms, poetically speaking. The structure of this poem is quite open indeed. It has its own irregular rhyme, so rhyming pattern. It has its own rhythm, and it follows no classical templates. That's very crucial in this regard. So I read the original poem fully, then I focus on its interpretation. The sea is calm tonight, the tide is full, the moon lies fair. Upon the straits on the French coast, the light gleams and is gone. The cliffs of England stand glimmering and vast. Out in the tranquil bay, come to the window, sweet is the night air. Only from the long line of spray where the sea meets the moon-blanched land, listen, you hear the grunting roar of pebbles which the waves draw back and fling. At their return up the high strand, begin and cease, and then again begin with tremulous cadence, slow, and bring the eternal note of sadness in. Sophocles long ago heard it on the Aegean, and it brought into his mind the turbid ebb and flow of human misery. We find also in the sound a thought, hearing it by this distant northern sea. The sea of faith was once due at the full and round earth shore, lay like the folds of a bright girdle furled, but now I only hear its melancholy long withdrawing roar, reiterating to the breath of the night wind down the vast ages drear and naked shingles of the world. Love, let us be true to one another, for the world which seems to lie before us like a land of dreams, so various, so beautiful, so new, hath really neither joy nor love nor light, nor certitude, nor peace, nor help for pain, and we are here on a darkling plain, swept with no, with confused alarms of struggle and flight, where ignorant armies clash by night. So this is the original poem. So let's interpret the poem in its fullest sense. So before we make its interpretation, tomorrow we will again spend one more lecture for this poem, and we will interpret the poem line by line, and we will go into more details of this poem. So just remember a few things about this poem, that Door Beach is a complex poem. It is almost all about the challenges to the theosophical, existential, and moral issues. The poem deals with morality, it deals with human existence, theology. There are many things that the poem deals with. It raises many issues. It talks about the faith, and it relates faith with life and how the life relates with faith. And it also talks about happiness, loneliness, and the genuine or the real interpretation of life. So we will discuss all these issues in its depth in the second video, and I will explain each and every stanza, each and every word stated by the poet Matthew Arnold while composing this poem, that is Door Beach. So have a nice day. Thank you very much for listening to this lecture.